Part 2. The next city I was headed for was Chicago. I actually used to live in Chicago. It's the city that was closest to where I grew up, so I've spent a lot of time there, have a great familiarity with the city. I still absolutely love the city, but it was a bit odd driving because I would usually be taking the train or the bus. Public transportation in Chicago is great, and if you're not taking the public transportation, walking around is really easy as well, unless it's winter time. So driving around was a bit different, and I felt a little bit touristy. I took some time to visit some people that I know who live there, and then I, of course, had to get a coffee. So I went to Metric, which is on the west side, and I had never actually been there before, but I have had their coffee before, and it was great to see it in person. This is also the same neighborhood where Intelligentsia roasts their coffee, and along with their mural, there's a bunch of other murals and industrial buildings around this area. This area leads into West Loop and Fulton Market when you're going eastward. I would love to live in West Loop at some point, except it's getting very gentrified and expensive now, so I don't know if that's ever going to be possible. Oh yeah, I saw a van conversion. The RV fan is a dead giveaway. So of course, whenever I'm down there, I like to drive through West Loop and drive around Fulton Market just to see how things have changed over the years. This is one of the stations for the elevated train system. It's a great unifier across the city because not only is it widely usable, but it's also widely used by all different kinds of people. Different classes of people, races, sex, gender, all of that. You could see any kind of person on the train, and like I said, it's a great unifier. It makes everybody feel like a Chicagoan, and you never know what you might see on the public transportation. Here's just a bunch more driving footage of the different neighborhoods in the west area before I start to head downtown. And as you move eastward through the city, the buildings start to become more skyscrapers and less that kind of industrial brick look, which means that you're just moving towards the Loop, which is the most congested downtown skyscrapery finance area of the city. I do miss living in Chicago. I think that I definitely am going to move there in the next 10 years. I'm going to keep it kind of vague at this point. But it really helped that when I was there that day, the weather was absolutely beautiful and it was not rainy or snowy, which it can be. It can also get to be extremely humid in the summer times. So don't let this beautiful weather fool you. It's not always this gorgeous, but when it is this gorgeous, man, there's nothing not to love. Because I'm not used to driving in the city, I actually have never really figured out the two-tier system for the roadways. Chicago actually has both an on-ground system and an underground system in some parts of the city. It's called Lower Wacker Drive. That's the main drive that I know of. And I always end up, when I'm driving downtown, I end up on Lower Wacker Drive and then I can't see anything. And the great thing about Chicago is that it's on a grid system, so it's pretty easy to figure out where you are in relation to where you want to go. And another great thing is that the lake is on the east side of the city. So if you're walking around and you can see where the buildings kind of stop, that probably is where the lake starts, so you know it's east. But when you go underground, you can't see that. All of my navigational tools just go out the window. Look at that great bridge. Hey look, another bridge. So the reason that I was driving downtown was because I wanted to go walk around more of the touristy areas that I might not usually visit when I go to the city. Gosh, it's pretty. Look at that. Of course, to get the full experience, you gotta park the van and start walking around. You can't just drive around the whole place, so that's what I did. Walking around this area always just brings back a lot of memories. This is a sculpture by Alexander Calder next to a building by Mies van der Rohe. This is the Marshall Field building, which is very famous. Eventually Macy's bought Marshall Field, but Marshall Field's was one of the big department stores back in the day. The famous Chicago sign for the Chicago Theater, which I've been to a couple of times. And this sculpture is of Pablo Picasso. A lot of times you'll see children running up the side of the sculpture and then sliding down it, which is really cute. This is one of my favorite buildings just to look at and stand underneath because it's built with this curve in the wall. It almost looks like the building itself is warping whenever you look up at it. There's just a great mix of different kinds of people in the city as well, so it's a great place to people watch, although at Millennium Park there were a little bit too many people for my taste at this point in time, and too few people wearing masks, so I definitely stayed kind of farther away from the cloud sculpture, Cloud Gate, aka the Bean. Millennium Park also has a pavilion, and there's a food truck festival going on, and there are a couple of fountains that have people's faces on it, and once in a while the fountains spit out water. It's very odd, honestly, but it's kind of iconic at the same time. After Millennium Park, I made my way to the reason that I went to Chicago. The thing that I wanted to see when I went to Chicago. The very famous, well-known Art Institute of Chicago. Just kidding. It was actually not the museum that I wanted to see, it was the sign across the street from the museum. And it was pretty funny because as soon as I started taking pictures and videos of the sign, other people noticed it was there. In fact, a crowd of people gathered. A little family and then another family, and people started just taking pictures, and I no longer had the entirety of the sign to myself. Why, might you ask, did I take pictures and videos of this sign? Why did I come all the way to Chicago to do so? Guess you'll have to see tomorrow. To be continued.